lower expectations in some sense and say, look, Donald Trump has had all this time as an experienced debater. He's done more presidential debates than really anyone else in modern history. So they're trying to make that kind of a clear expectation-setting argument. But they're also saying that she has this task of trying to really get voters to get a better sense of where she stands on certain issues. And so they know that that is a high bar for them. And according to polling, that is what Americans are saying. They feel like they have a sense of where Donald Trump stands for because they've seen so much of him over the last decade. But that with her, it's a little bit murky. So they want to be sure that she comes out and affirms that vision, makes her own case. She's treating this like a prosecutor who gets ready for trial. She's been taking very serious preparations for days. She's had full mock debate sessions. She's doing it all with the TV lighting and the stage and all of that because it's been 4 years since she's been on a debate stage, and that was at the vice presidential level. So in terms of measuring success, they hope that she can have a couple of really memorable moments where she is perhaps fighting back to something that Donald Trump says. They're preparing for him to have derogatory comments, personal comments, to bring things up that they have all been going through in these practice sessions for that could get a little bit ugly. At least that's what they're trying to put out there in terms of an expectation. But they're saying that when it comes to her own record, she has to walk this really fine line between trying to tout the Biden-Harris administration accomplishments as she views them while saying, here's how I would be different. And we know that that's something certainly that the former president is likely going to use as more of an attack strategy.
Yeah, I mean, you spoke with the former president this morning. What did he tell you?
Well, he's feeling good about this debate, and I asked him about the biggest challenge, and he said it's the fact that he doesn't know sort of which version of Harris will show up, that she's taken different policy positions when she was running as a candidate herself versus as Joe Biden's vice president, and that you sort of have to prepare for both. But the way the Trump campaign is hoping to look past that is to basically say whatever her positions are now or whatever they have been in the past, they're going to find what they believe are the most liberal positions she has taken and make her own those positions. I think both candidates actually have the same goal tonight. It's to define Kamala Harris. The Harris campaign wants to do it in that future forward way that Monica was just describing. And the Trump campaign wants to basically say, whatever you think of the most liberal version of Kamala Harris is, that's who they believe is running. And that's the case they're going to try to present tonight.
And so to hear Monica, they've essentially in the Harris campaign been running moot campaign setups. How is the former president handling that?
Far less formalized process. This started several weeks ago at Mar-a-Lago, but it was mostly just Trump and some of his advisors basically sitting around chatting, trying to talk about some of his policy accomplishments as president, trying to kind of sharpen some of his attack lines. I'm told by people who've been involved in this process that as it's gotten closer, he's gotten more focused, that he was a little bit either distracted or perhaps nervous, depending on who I talked to. But over the last couple days, these sessions have expanded. They've been several hours long at a clip, and he has been more focused and more interested in trying to kind of refine these lines. He understands the stakes of tonight, I think, as well as anybody.
And so, Ashley, it's the vice president's full first face-off with Trump, but it's not her first time on debate stages. Here's what she was like in the first Democratic presidential debate, which I co-moderated. Listen to what she said. This is 2019, that in a moment when everyone was talking one over the other. Take a listen to this. Senator Harris. Senator Harris. Please, we will let you all speak. Senator Harris.
We can't afford to wait for evolution on these issues. Hey, guys, you know what? America does not want to witness a food fight. They want to know how we're going to put food on their table. Yeah?
Not a food fight, food on the table. Boy, that was just so precise. What does it tell you about what we might expect tonight from the vice president?
Well, and don't forget she had that moment when she was going up against Pence and she said, you know, I'm talking right now. So, I mean, I expect the vice president to really try to achieve three things. One, I think she's going to get out of Donald Trump's way. You know, he's proven to be bombastic, petty, and small. I think she's going to allow him the space to do all of those things. And I think not having to, the mics being turned off really takes a lot of pressure off of her to rebut his every sort of lie. And so I think that's going to allow her to focus on her own message and conveying that. And I think the second thing is is really to that point about conveying her message. She's got to lay out a vision. Her most important audience is that 28% of Americans, if you look at the last New York Times poll, that says they don't yet know her well. That's her most important audience. It's not proving Donald Trump to be wrong. It's not, defending Joe Biden's record. It is speaking directly to those people, using this debate as a conduit to lay out a vision for them and how we move forward as a nation. That's going to be her greatest contrast to Donald Trump. And I would say the third thing is to hold him accountable to his record. That has not yet happened. And I think that's going to be the way she's going to needle him, is to remind him that he oversaw the worst economy in modern history, that he was a complete failure on COVID response and 500,000 people lost their lives, that racial violence and tension was at an all-time high when he was the president. So I think she's going to do that last point, and that's what I think is going to really get under his skin. And let me just say one other thing. You know, I was Pelosi's communications director, and I know more than anything else, the one thing that gets him rattled and unhinged is a woman challenging him. So just her very presence and being strong and presenting herself in a presidential way is going to unravel him.
Lance, what do you think the former president has to accomplish tonight, and how can he accomplish that?
I think Garrett's reporting says it all, and I think it's on point. I mean, look, we saw reporting come out overnight that Kamala Harris at one time supported taxpayer funding gender reassignment surgeries, gender transition surgeries for migrants. We saw that she wanted to decriminalize things like heroin. We saw that she wants to defund ICE. I mean, these are all the things that keep coming out about her record. He has to hold her accountable. If you look at the New York Times poll from over the weekend, not only do people not know a lot about her, there's also 50% of them, though, that already think she's too liberal. So I think the former president has to hold her accountable for her record. She wants to show up and say, I was this tough-on-crime prosecutor in California, and oh, by the way, now I'm just a moderate running for president of the United States. She wants to gloss over her time in the Senate, where she was the most liberal senator. She wants to gloss over the time she ran for president, where some of these crazy left-wing ideas came out on her campaign. And she wants to gloss over the fact that she's been vice president as the border has exploded over the last 4 years and inflation has soared 20%. So it's really up to the president not to just say that she's a flip-flopper, but to say that she's disingenuous about who she says she is now. That's what he's going to have to do tonight. And it sounds to me like, based on Garrett's reporting, that's where they are, and that's the right place.
Yeah, I mean, Lance, do you think that's going to be particularly difficult for the former president or not, when he himself has taken positions that sometimes are diametrically opposed to positions that he earlier expressed? Let me give you an example. When I interviewed him, the second time I interviewed him for Telemundo Network when he was president, he was already running for re-election, he told me, first out of the gate answer that he told me was that he was going to sign executive actions reinstituting DACA. Now, this is the same president that, during his presidency, eliminated DACA. Is that kind of disparity going to be a hindrance for the former president tonight?
Well, I think that would be on the vice president to try to highlight those types of discrepancies. But I would just, again, point you to most of the polling that's out there. The New York Times is kind of the freshest off the top of my mind. And this was said earlier. Everybody knows who Donald Trump is. They know what comes with him and everything and the like. That's why this is really more about Kamala Harris tonight and the position she's taken. Because, as Ashley just said herself, I mean, a lot of people don't know who she is. So, and Garrett said it right. It's really about both defining Kamala Harris tonight. That I do agree with. His role tonight is to remind people all of these far left positions that she's taken and to show that she's disingenuous on that front and that she's just doing it to get elected, as Bernie Sanders said over the weekend.
Yeah, and Monica, are there any instances, you think, where the vice president will have to break or limit, differentiate herself from President Biden?
I think there's an awareness that they want to do that. And one example we already saw in the last few weeks was she's taking a different position when it comes to the capital tax gains rate, specifically a lower one than what President Biden had proposed in an appeal perhaps to more moderate voters, to some more independent voters who might be attracted to something like that. But I think the other thing that's really important in all of this is that she is taking a page from Donald Trump's own book in terms of trolling. And that is what she's really trying to do here today with with her campaign putting up billboards all over Philadelphia. She's bringing Anthony Scaramucci and Olivia Troy, who worked in the Trump administration, who have since become very outspoken critics against the former president, to be here in the spin room tonight. And so they're trying to amp that as well. They're trying to say that they're not trying to differentiate as much with Joe Biden tonight, of course, as they are with Donald Trump, and that's their focus.
I mean, Ashley, ahead of the debate, the Harris campaign put out a series of ads, but a new one needling Trump over his his positions, right? One or the other. This is part of the ad where they focus on Trump's fixation on crowd sizes at his rallies. What do you make of her getting personal with her attacks against Trump right before the debate, as Monica was saying?
Yeah, I mean, I think these ads are brilliant. I mean, that's a good one. But the one that I think is probably the most powerful is the words of his own closest advisors, from his national security advisor to his chiefs of staff, saying that he's unfit to be the president, that he's not worthy of sitting behind the Resolute desk. That is a powerful message, because who knows a leader closer and more intimately than the people who have served them? And he's got 40+ people who've served in his administration across the board that are saying that he is not fit for office. So they're going to continue to advance that message. And then you couple that with the fact that here's a gentleman that tried to cheat the last election, called the Secretary of State and asked for 11,000 votes. And when he didn't get those 11,000 votes, he actually had a tantrum and incited a deadly, violent insurrection against the government. That is a message she's going to continue to convey. That's why you're seeing people like Dick Cheney come over and say, I'm going to vote for a Democrat for the first time in my life, because he is unfit and unworthy to be our commander-in-chief. So to me, I think it's a smart strategy, because that is a message we have to keep reminding the American people of. Despite these lies, despite the polls, you've got a person that really is a direct threat to everything we represent, and that's Donald Trump.
You know, Garrett, just thinking about what Lance was saying about the fact is that a lot of people really don't know the vice president that well, and there's a lot of preconceived concepts and ideas already about who Donald Trump is and what his administration looked like. Is there anything that you think Trump is unwilling to broach tonight?
This is always the operative question with Trump. There is what the campaign's plan is, and then there's what Trump decides to do in the moment. And that's why I think the Harris campaign is focused so much on the idea of trying to needle him. The Trump campaign has a plan. They have practiced it. They have drilled it. They have talked to reporters about it. And then there is what Donald Trump feels when the pressure is on, if he gets frustrated with the vice president. As I think Ashley pointed out, with Donald Trump, when he's confronted by strong women, whether it's the women he's running against, like Hillary Clinton or Kamala Harris, or a moderator like Megyn Kelly in one of those early debates in 2015, 2016, he can get frustrated and he can get rattled, and he can be what I think a lot of people view as the worst version of Donald Trump. The campaign is trying to put as much structure around him to prevent that from happening, and I think the Harris world rightly understands that if they can kind of remind undecided voters, who are probably not all that undecided about Donald Trump, quite frankly, of that version of Trump, it accrues to their advantage.
Monica Alba, Garrett Hake, Ashley Etienne, and Lance Trover, thank you all so very much for being with us this morning. And stay with us for more coverage from me and my colleagues all day long, live here in Philadelphia. Tonight, you can actually watch the debate right here on MSNBC. Rachel Maddow and team will have special analysis beginning at 7 p.m. Eastern, 4 p.m. Pacific. On Capitol Hill, the 13 U.S. service members killed in a suicide bombing during their withdrawal in Afghanistan are being honored posthumously 3 years later. Attending the ceremony, top congressional members of both parties, along with the families of those killed. In just a couple of minutes, House Speaker Mike Johnson will present the families with the Congressional Gold Medal, Congress's highest civilian award given to anyone who has made exceptional contributions to the nation. I apologize for speaking to you over this extraordinarily important moment. We'll take you there shortly.
And the home of the brave.
Every election night reveals a story about the candidates, about the campaign that we just watched, but it reveals a story about the voters who decided the election. The presidential election is America's family photo. We take one every 4 years.